The following recording is a production of Kickin' Out at 2 in conjunction with the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network and is intended for private use only. For more information, head on over to facebook.com/Kickin' Out at 2 or our Twitter handle @Kickin' Out 2, along with searching Retromania with a W on any and all podcast platforms available to listen to archive shows such as this and all the great content of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. Evergreen content at your fingertips anytime at your listening pleasure. And with that being said, we thank you for listening and hope you enjoy the show. We're keeping up with our worst theme here on Kickin' Out at 2 for the month of October, as we're going to be watching one of, if not the worst rematches in wrestling history today. That is Hollywood Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior from WCW Halloween Havoc 1998. Thank you all so much for pressing play, hitting download, liking, subscribing, rating, and reviewing. Kickin' Out at 2 is a part of the Retromania Pro Wrestling Podcast Network. And of course, I wouldn't be able to do this podcast without my co-pilot, my tag team partner, my dear close personal longtime friend, as the late great Mean Gene Okerlund would say, Dennis J. Levy. What's up, pal?
Chilling. It's funny that you say Mean Gene Okerlund, because when you text me, hey, I'm on my way, I'm like, you know what, good for us. I'm gonna go on YouTube and see what's out there for wrestling clips. I thought this is hilarious, and anyone at the list and the part of the listening audience of Kickin' Out at 2, I highly implore you, go to YouTube and look up Mean Gene Okerlund interviews Kamala. Oh my God!
I see that one.
I pissed funny, myself. Yeah. I never saw it until today.
Yeah.
I'm like, folks, oh my God, Mean Gene Okerlund, God rest your soul. When he wanted to be funny, he wasn't just fucking funny. He was fucking hilarious.
Yeah, he was the best stick man.
He was so good.
Improv, like he was one of those guys that if he didn't want to be in wrestling, he probably could have been a stick man in sports. He probably could have called professional. I think at one point I think his son, if I'm not mistaken, did as a color analyst locally for the Cubs.
Really?
In the Chicago area. I forget the kid's name.
I gotta look that up.
He's not a kid, but
yeah.
I mean,
if he had like the same voice or whatever, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I don't recall exactly, but I remember hearing about that a number of years ago. So anyways, we're kind of keeping with the worst theme. The last episode we recorded, we talked about the worst debuts in wrestling history, one of them being the Ultimate Warrior in WCW from 1998. And I thought it would be a pretty good idea for us to do. Originally, I said to Dennis, think of like the worst match or worst pay-per-view in wrestling history. And Dennis, you had kind of brought this match up, and I thought, why don't we just stick with the theme, and we're going to go back and watch this match with all of you. I know it might not be a treat to watch this match. It's been probably 25 years since I watched this match, and I kind of talked about it on our last episode where I was at a friend's house watching this pay-per-view, and the feed went out towards the end of the Hogan Warrior match, so I got to miss the DDP Goldberg main event. However, I'm going to kind of rechange history a little bit here for our next episode, because on our next episode, Dennis, we're not going to miss DDP and Goldberg. You and I are going to watch DDP and Goldberg from Halloween Havoc on Halloween. What do you think about that?
I tell you what, I'm not normally when someone talks about Goldberg matches, I'm like, whatever. At least they're quick, right? But this one, I actually do enjoy. This is probably my favorite Goldberg match.
So that'll be our next episode.
Yeah.
We're gonna watch that back. Hell of a match. Like you said, it's probably your favorite Goldberg match, and I think there's some good conversation pieces that we can get into regarding that. But that's for our next episode. Yeah. This episode, we're gonna talk about Hogan and Warrior and the build-up towards this, what they did right, what they did wrong with it, as well as some of the worst. Or not some of the worst, but some of the most infamous rematches in wrestling history that didn't live up to the original. There's quite a few. So we're going to get into that as we watch this episode and talk a little bit about, or watch this match on this episode and talk a little bit about Hogan and Warrior from this pay-per-view Halloween Havoc. We'll run down the card, the match results from this show as we're watching this as well. So what I'll need all of you to do, because it's been a while since we've done one of these little watch-along deals, go to your Peacock, search for Halloween Havoc. You'll find Season 10, Episode 1. It'll be Halloween Havoc 1998. And I want you to fast forward to 2 hours, 33 minutes, and 57 seconds and pause it. And you'll pause it and you'll see like a shot of the crowd as we get ready for Hollywood Hogan's entrance And when I say play, press play, and maybe or maybe not, I will turn the audio up. I'll give you guys a timestamp every once in a while, and we'll take it from there. So, are you ready, Dennis?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, hit play. As we get this crowd shot here. Now, as we watch this match, we can't not talk about the first match from WrestleMania 6. Mm-hmm. Hogan Warrior. 1990. Hogan was the WWF champion. The Warrior was the Intercontinental champion. Just give me a brief description of your thoughts about the build-up for that match in 1990 in WWF, and what came of it, the result of it. Your overall thoughts on the build-up, the match itself, and what followed.
Well, I never was a big fan of the Warrior, but everyone, I was never between I'm born May 20th, 1980. From 6-ish to 8-ish, I was not a Hogan fan. I was a DiBiase, Jake the Snake, dark gimmicks. You know,
yep.
That's what I was really into. But I finally turned around. Well, once I got 10-ish, I started liking Hogan a lot.
Okay.
So this was kind of my 1990 was my awakening of how important Hogan was and he's not my personal cup of tea. But I tried his team. He grew on you. Yeah, and I started liking it.
Okay,
yeah.
He grew on you.
Yep. With that being said, I was definitely way more Hogan than an Ultimate Warrior. But I understood, okay. The only dynamic I didn't like, even as a kid, was babyface versus babyface. I would like to see one of them have the goal. Just for one match, 1 month, be a bad guy, you know what I mean?
So you weren't a fan of the build-up with both guys being good guys?
I know.
Really?
I thought it was more...
So that was the first time as a kid I ever saw that.
That's true, me too.
For me. So I was a Hogan guy. Not to interrupt you, but I was a Hogan guy. And Warrior was... At times I felt like he was displaying bad guy tendencies. For instance, the first thing that really... got the wheels in motion for that rivalry in 1990 was Warrior accidentally clotheslining Hogan in a tag match against Mr. Perfect and the Genius.
That's right, yeah.
And then, at times, both of them saving each other and Warrior Hogan being grateful that Warrior saved him, from an attack from Earthquake or whomever. But then when Hogan went to save Warrior, he wanted no part of it. So I kind of looked at Warrior, even though it wasn't officially a title, but I kind of looked at Warrior as the bad guy in that sense. That he didn't like Hogan, he didn't want Hogan's help, and I didn't at that age. I was 7 years old. I didn't see good guy versus. Even though in hindsight it was good guy versus good guy, I didn't see it that way at that time as a kid because I was such a big Hogan fan.
That's interesting.
But continue. Let's talk about the match itself.
The match itself, talking about that had to be, my opinion, maybe, I was about to say, it probably was work rate wise, maybe Warrior's best match, but no, I got to go with Savage, Warrior. But it's in his top 3 best matches of all time, for sure.
I mean, there's not many great Warrior matches, but I
actually think, seriously, I love Savage Warrior.
I do too.
Match. I thought that was a phenomenal match.
I do too. Unbelievable. And it's interesting because there's probably a short list of guys in Warrior's career that he has had great matches with. Hogan, Savage being,
Rude.
Ravishing Rick Rude. Those are probably the 3 that he really had. I remember a match on Saturday Night's Main Event he had with Ted DiBiase that was pretty good when Warrior was the WWF champion. But, top 3 Warrior match itself. In your opinion, Hogan Warriors WrestleMania 6. That's in Warrior's top 3. There's not many great matches he's had, so but it's the one that I think people most recognize for his career. In my opinion, as a fan, I mean they see I think Savage Elizabeth moment at the end of WrestleMania 7 kind of overshadows a little bit Warrior's victory in that match, but I think Warrior, that crowning moment of him being the champion. Now, what did you think of him as champ? Hogan not champion, Warrior as champion.
Great. It was a gamble. It was a great gamble.
Okay.
There was anyone that was gonna take the mantle and potentially be as popular as Hogan, this was the Ultimate Warrior.
Okay.
Obviously, once he got it, he fell on his face a little bit. And also, they didn't really. I don't know. Like I'm trying to go back to when Warrior got the championship, and I'm trying to go back in time, and like they didn't really book him that good too. Like during his championship reign, what was like his biggest rivalry? Was it Rude? Was it Slaughter? Like they didn't really give him like.
Yeah, Rude,
they didn't really book him that well.
Yeah, Rude and Slaughter, I would say, and at one point he was involved in. He was part of the rivalry with the Legion of Doom and Demolition, so they would do some 6-man tags as well.
But that's an indictment of him as a champion when you put him in 6-mans, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was they were trying to go with the whole face paint thing.
Yeah.
You know, Demolition had 3 guys.
Oh, that's fair.
Road Warriors has 2. They put Ultimate Warrior in there, and it kind of led to Survivor Series where we saw that team with, you know, the Ultimate Warrior, Kerry Von Erich, and the Legion of Doom against Mr. Perfect and Demolition. But it's fair to say that Warrior's run as champion wasn't as memorable. Do you think it was because of the way that he was booked, or do you think it was because he didn't live up to the top billing the way Hogan did?
I think maybe potentially, but you know, when you book Hogan, you put him against Andre the Giant, and like I get it, Andre the Giant, like in my opinion, the biggest heels, right?
Yeah.
I love Rick Rude, but Rick Rude was not the number 1 heel during that time, you know. Like for example, what was the main event of that SummerSlam? Wasn't that Hogan?
It was Warrior and Rude, but they built it as a double main event.
Yeah.
Hogan and Earthquake was the first half of the double main event. And Warrior and Rude in the cage was the main event.
Oh, that's a closer show?
Yeah, that's the closest show.
My memory is playing tricks.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's all good. Now, let me ask you this, okay? And this is a theory I have run with for a while, and I would like your opinion on it, okay? It seems that, in my opinion, Hogan set the bar as a champion, as the babyface, so high that anybody else that came after him didn't quite reach that level that Hogan did in terms of like drawing power, in terms of what they made for money. Because if you look back at it, okay, you know, Hogan had a run from as a top guy, as the champion from 84 to 88, okay? Beating the likes of the Iron Sheik, King Kong Bundy, Mr. Wonderful, Big John Studd, Kamala, Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 3. You know, the list goes on and on and on with Hogan as the champion. And that was during a huge period in wrestling. The popularity was off the roof, off the chain, you know, blew the roof off. You know, selling out everywhere. Printing money. Hogan drops the title in 88 to Andre, and then he hands it over to DiBiase that sets up the tournament for Randy Savage to win it. Now, Randy Savage was getting very popular, okay? But there have been people out there within the industry and fans alike that have said that Savage's run as champion wasn't quite as good as Hogan's run. Do you think that's because Savage didn't live up to the top billing? Or do you think Hogan set the bar way too high with all those metrics with merchandise and live event ticket sales and pay-per-views and all that other stuff? You think that it was just a goal that was unattainable for everybody that came after Hogan?
That's an interesting question. Because the truth, like, in reality, no one got Hogan status until Stone Cold. And what was that, 10 years?
That's fair. Yeah, that's...
Because I love Bret Him and Hart as much as the next guy. And I hate Shawn Michaels. But I understand that he was a great wrestler and he was loved. The Undertaker, yada yada yada. But yeah, no one got Hogan status until Stone Cold. So yeah, the bar was too high.
The bar was too high.
But granted, Hogan made as much as I want to say, like, you know, Vince put all his chips on Hogan, and when it was someone else, so like you could tell he was kind of like the WWE wasn't always 100% behind that guy. Mm-hmm. Like that I just never felt that the person who took or was the champion during the Hogan eras of like the glory years per se. Mm-hmm. I don't think they ever got a fair shot. I don't think they. So
that would basically be like Savage and Warrior, because I believe in that philosophy. I think Hogan drew so much money and he had the machine behind him that it was hard for guys like Savage and even Warrior to obtain that status.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
I think, and it's not because for lack of talent, okay? And let's scale back here for a minute and let's talk about Warrior for a second here, okay? Heading into the match with Hogan at WrestleMania 6, Warrior was on par for being just as popular as Hogan. I mean, he was making good merch money. They were selling T-shirts and wristbands and face paint kits for him. And he was working with top people. A year prior, he pretty much feuded with the entire Heenan family. Bobby Heenan was the top heel manager. He had a series of matches with Rick Rude, which were very good. He had a house show run with Andre the Giant, which were not great matches from a bell-to-bell standpoint, but they were attraction matches that drew money. That was during a time period when they were running two events in the same evening. Hogan would headline one show with somebody else, and Warrior would headline the other show with Andre. That would be the top attraction. So Warrior was popular, and Warrior was on that track to getting to the main event and eventually working with Hogan at that WrestleMania. But it was about whether he could maintain. I think what wrestling fans and even people within the industry have said over the years, it's about Warrior being able to maintain that momentum and be a draw and produce at a main event level, and he wasn't able to do that on his own. He needed assistance from people. And I think putting him in matches with Rick Rude, I think, was crucial for his run, because Rude was able to carry the load in those matches bell to bell, and he was able to make Warrior look really good. So I think overall Hogan blew expectations out of the water, and I think there were unrealistic expectations for everybody else to meet that level of success following Hogan's run. And a great point you made earlier. Nobody reached Hogan's status until it was Stone Cold Steve Austin. Not anything against Bret Hart, not anything against Shawn Michaels, not anything against Diesel or Undertaker, guys that wore the belt before that. Sid wore the championship at one point. Nobody reached that Hogan status until it came to Austin. And then it progressed after that. It became The Rock, and then eventually Triple H. Triple H was, the top bad guy, and he was the champ. He wasn't making Hogan money or Austin money, but he was part of a huge boom period for the company in terms of their success financially. Let's talk a little bit about. It's interesting that here's the ref bump. Here's the ref bump. Oh, and Hogan just gives him one knee right.
Why would he kick? Nick Patrick is under the NWO umbrella. Why would he kick him in the head like that?
No, he wasn't part of the NWO at this point.
Oh, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so before we get into... Let's get into the Halloween Havoc card. Because this show, we talked about it earlier, ran too long, live on pay-per-view, and it was during this match that Hogan had... they were going to perform this fireball spot, and that was when the feed went out at my friend's house, and we couldn't get the... Oh, here's the Giant. Okay? And so, on this card, we had Chris Jericho defeat Raven by submission in a unannounced opening match for the TV title, which was actually a pretty fun match. Raph defeated Meng. Disco Inferno defeated Juventud Guerrera to earn a shot at Billy Kidman later in the night for the Cruiserweight Championship. This is when they were doing Disco Inferno trying to enter the Cruiserweight division. Alex Wright defeated Fit Finlay. Saturn defeated Lodi. Kidman would defeat Disco Inferno to retain the Cruiserweight Championship. Rick Steiner and Buff Bagwell defeated Scott Steiner and the Giant for the WCW World Tag Team titles. Bagwell would turn on Rick Steiner for like the 8th time. And then Rick Steiner would defeat his brother Scott Steiner in a no disqualification match. Scott Hall defeated Kevin Nash by a countout after Kevin Nash powerbombed Scott Hall 3 times and walked out of the match. Bret Hart would defeat Sting to retain the United States Championship.
Was that a good match? I don't remember that at all.
Not really. Hollywood Hogan would defeat the Warrior, as we're watching that currently now. Spoiler alert. And then Goldberg would defeat Diamond Dallas Page to retain the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. 12 matches on this card, and this show ran way too long. A lot of people have a bad taste in their mouth about this show, but the one shining light of this pay-per-view is probably the match that nobody saw, and that was Diamond Dallas Page and Goldberg. And then eventually they saw it on the following evening's Nitro when they aired the match commercial-free, uninterrupted, at the start of their second hour of the 3-hour show. We talked about Warrior having very few great matches, and those being against Rick Rude, Randy Savage, and Hulk Hogan. Out of all of the rematches, out of all those matches Warrior had with them, Warrior didn't have a bad rematch with Rick Rude. They had a trilogy of matches on pay-per-view. All 3 were good. Rude beating him at WrestleMania 5. Rude losing to him at SummerSlam 89. And then Warrior defeating him for the WWF Championship inside the steel cage at SummerSlam 90. Then you fast forward to his matches with Randy Savage. The WrestleMania 7 match, one of my all-time favorite matches. It's a classic.
Me too.
It's a classic. And I don't blame you for that being Warrior's greatest match ever. Okay? Then they had the match at SummerSlam in 1992, babyface versus babyface, with the storyline being that who was Mr. Perfect going to represent in that match? Because Mr. Perfect and Ric Flair were trying to drive a wedge between the two of them. I didn't really care for that story, but the match was still pretty good.
That was in London, right?
London, yep, Wembley Stadium. Yeah. Now, is this the fireball spot here? I think this.
He grabbed something. He's holding something.
It looks like he's holding something here. This is probably the only rematch that Warriors had with those 3 individuals, Hogan, Rude, and Savage, that totally tanked. What do you think caused me? I'll go on a limb. Yeah. I think what caused this match to be the shits was the fact that both of these guys were not the athletes that they once were 8 years prior. And the quality of the match suffered because of their age and their limitations. And I also think, too, some of the hocus pocus story of, like, Warrior disappearing and then being in the mirror and Hogan's the only guy to see it, like, all that shit.
Worst promo of everything.
I think that was what helped make this match suffer. Would it be fair to agree with that statement, Dennis?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Now, do you think... Here's a question for you, okay? This would be Warrior's final WCW appearance. He debuted in August of 98 to build to this match. Yep. Do you think they should have waited a little while longer to do Warrior and Hogan? Do you think Warrior should have had a few matches under his belt before they got to this? Here's the spot here.
Here we go.
He pulls the flash paper out. He's got the lighter in the Ziploc. So he's been wrestling with that in his tights.
What's that sweat or blood? What's going
on?
Know. You saw that?
It might be blood.
It looked like blood, right?
Yeah, I think it's blood. Oh, here we go. It messed it up. Oh, at least Warrior didn't sell it like he was burnt. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I give Warrior credit for that.
Yeah. At least he didn't sell it like it was burnt.
He's pissed.
Yeah. That's what, pretty much right before that was when the cable went out, or when the feed got cut off at my friend's house.
Oh my God! Right on that spot like that?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
And I didn't know what happened after that.
How did they fuck it up that bad? They miss a match and a half?
Well,
I can't admit. I get the last match. I actually understand that. As fucked up as it is, but you miss. You miss 2 matches essentially. That is fucked.
Yeah.
That is fucked.
Well, it was the company not informing the cable providers and the satellite subscribers that they were going to run a little longer. Then they had to pay for that time. Yeah, that is blood. Hogan is bleeding. It was probably the buckle from his weightlifting belt that Warrior used when he wrapped it around his fist to punch him. Low blow. Referee. All right, here's the other thing. This isn't billed as a no disqualification.
I was going to ask you that.
So, God, this is terrible.
But this is WCW, this era.
Yeah, they didn't really. There was no continuity with the rules.
Yeah, Bischoff has been watching too much ECW.
No, I don't think he was watching enough.
Yeah, I'm just saying, just blatant on DQ.
What do we got here? There's Horace Hogan.
Yeah.
And then
Are they actually is he actually a Hogan?
That is his nephew,
okay.
Yeah. That is Hogan's nephew. Terry Bollea's nephew. Horace Boulder, I believe. Or Horace Bollea, I forget.
I just don't see the
family
relation.
He's the son of Hogan's late brother.
Okay. I never knew his brother died. Anyway.
Yeah, that's apparently... clothesline from Warrior there. See, this is just...
Yeah.
This is just pretty awful. Bischoff out there, kind of directing traffic. And it looks like we're getting towards the end of the finish here. We're going to talk a little bit after this match is over. Right in the back. And I think the top of that chair probably nailed Warrior in the back of the head.
I think he might have.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Thank God this fucking shit is over with.
Everyone involved is saying that. Oh my God, look at the fans real quick.
Yeah.
Aaronville was like 2 people maybe clap. Look at this.
Yeah, they're
everyone else is like, oh my God, this is
thank God it's over.
Yeah.
All right, so I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So, do you think they should have waited to build up to this match with Warrior and Hogan?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this was Warrior debuted in August of '98. He was a part of the War Games team for WCW. He made a quick cameo, pretty much targeting Hogan in the match to build up to this. Do you think who else in your mind do you think Warrior could have or should have had
before Hogan?
Before Hogan.
All right.
I'm guessing you're gonna say some guys in the NWO.
That's what I mean. Yeah, they should have went through the Big Show.
Yeah.
I think Big Show should have been a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Where like he's the last man standing before Hogan.
I agree. I was just gonna say that.
They missed. That was a missed opportunity.
I totally agree. I think that should. Oh, look at this. They're lighting lighter fluid on him like they're gonna light him on fire. Now this is not believable.
Yeah.
Not that any of the other shit was before, but this is definitely not believable. I'm in agreement with you. I do think, the giant Big Show, whatever he was, he probably should have been.
I think they could have melted for at least 6 months, so even up to a year.
A
A
year?
year. I know it sounds like
he could have ran. So you're telling me he could have ran through the entire? They would have gone.
No,
through.
I have other ideas.
I
even have like. I can even see like Ric Flair. It's like, what makes you think you are the guy to take out Hogan in the NWO and stuff like that?
Okay.
I can just see like him like really getting tested, and it's like finally he's the one that's gonna take out Hogan.
What do you think about him and Sting in a singles match? They both had history as tag team partners in Memphis, which was kind of acknowledged at one point.
The story writes itself. I like that.
Okay, Sting, Goldberg, I think would be as much as the quality of the match wouldn't. I think if I were to have the pencil and book the Warrior, and we're going to pause it here at 2:56:40, as we're going to kind of discuss a little bit, at length here. If I had the opportunity at that time I was only 15 years old at the time when that happened, but in hindsight, if you look back on it, I agree with you. He should have went through the NWO before he got to Hogan. But I think there are also big money matchups they could have capitalized on. I like the idea about Ric Flair, okay? That Flair kind of is the one to challenge Warrior to prevent him from being the one to stop Hogan, okay? I get that idea. I'm on board with that. Sting, like you said, the story writes itself, the history they have with each other. I think, if anything, his run in WCW should or could have culminated with him and Goldberg beating him and him passing the torch to Goldberg.
Wow, I never even thought about that.
And it doesn't have to be for the title either, okay?
I think you do it for the title. But anyway, then the match itself would have been absolutely fucking horrible. But the build-up, I think, would have been amazing.
Well, I think the way they construct... But here's the thing. Goldberg has always been known for... And even Warrior, too, had been known for their short, quick matches.
Yeah.
You can build it up as it being this clash of titans between the two of them. But it doesn't have to go more than 5, 6, 7 minutes at best. They both hit their greatest hits. Warrior does a power press slam, a couple of clotheslines. Goldberg kicks out of it. Everyone's like, whoa, nobody's kicked out of the press slam. Goldberg does a spear. Maybe Warrior kicks out of it. Jackhammer. Maybe they deliver all their greatest hits, all their signature moves within this 5, 6 minute span, which includes their entrances too, okay? Let's be honest there. You got to include the entrances so that it's like a little mini movie. You get the best of both of them in this small package so that it doesn't drag out and you expose them.
Gun to the head. Which entrance you like better, Warrior or Goldberg?
I like Goldberg's entrance better.
Me too.
I like Goldberg's entrance. You know why? I think the importance of it with him coming out and they got like the cops, because they used to use real police officers.
That's a nice touch.
You know, and
that's a nice touch.
Kevin Sullivan once said in a shoot interview that he designed it that way because he watched a Mike Tyson fight. And Mike Tyson came. They had the camera pan to the backstage area. He comes out of his locker room with his entourage and the Las Vegas police, and it looks like they're like, this is a bad man that they are protecting all of you from him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so Sullivan took that idea to use with Goldberg and had like security and police, and I thought it was a great way of presenting him. But when it comes to Warriors run, I think it should. Sting, Hogan, definitely get to Hogan, obviously, because of the history they have, you know. But I think going through the NWO gauntlet would have been the better option.
Would have been
building
such
it
a
to,
great story,
to Hogan.
too.
You know, Sting, with the history they have.
Yeah.
I like the idea with Flair, and then it culminating with Goldberg, and he kind of passes the torch and moves on.
But you know what the X factor is, right?
What's that?
Hogan's not going to do the job.
Not necessarily.
So if he goes through the ringer of the NWO guys, at the end of the story, he has to win. You can't have Hogan unless you do 50-50 booking. You have to have Warrior at that point.
Okay.
To go over Hogan.
Okay.
And I really think that the Bischoff was like, Hogan, thank you so much for this NWO stuff. You're making me such a rich man. What can I do for you, brother? He goes, well, I had to do a job back in 1990. That's really...
That's what everybody... That's the narrative, yeah.
I think that's what happened.
Yeah, I think there's a good amount of...
I know, we're talking about perfect world stuff,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, Bischoff had a plan.
All right, so we talked about it earlier. We're going to close the show with this discussion here and just kind of go back and forth a little bit. This match is probably one of the worst rematches in wrestling history. Fair to say.
Absolutely.
So, give me some rematches in wrestling history that either they were the worst in your opinion, or they just didn't live up to the original match that took place.
It's kind of funny that
because there's not many matches in wrestling history that you could say that it's fair to say that the rematches were better than the original or lived up to the original.
It's very rare.
It's very rare. So, give me some matches in your mind that you felt were the worst rematches in wrestling history, or some that just didn't live up to the original.
All right, I'm not going to start with my main event one. I got three that
It
are
doesn't matter if it's a main event.
There's one that we didn't even think about, and we talked about it in the car. Just him make a sack of potatoes. Me and you, when we were going over here.
Okay, what is it?
Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles. That WrestleMania.
Yeah.
That's a rematch, and
Yep.
we had high expectations,
Yep.
and it felt. Hey, if you actually watch it, where you can watch it now with no hype, the match is not as bad as we thought it was. But it was as bad as we could have built it up too high.
I think fans had way too high an expectation because of their match in New Japan. I think also, and I said this to you in the car, and I'll say it here, I think that WrestleMania was a little long in the tooth. It ran way too long, and the placement of that match, I think, helped make it suffer. I think fans were, in this, I could be totally off base, but I feel in WWE's mind, they thought putting that match there with the quality of athletes that the two of them were, that they thought they were going to get that crowd back. And that show was going into 3 hours, I think, by the time Shinsuke and AJ got on screen. And I think people were starting to get burnt out. And I think it's a combination of that and the overhype from fans. And let's be honest, as much as I would have loved to have seen the match that they put out in New Japan on a WrestleMania, this is WWE we're talking about here, at least at that time. And they were never big proponents of taking something that was popular or was successful somewhere else and putting it on their program. They always had to alter or tweak something, whether it was a style of a match or whether it was a character or a performer. They always had to make their own version of it and to put their own spin on it. And I think that also plays into why there was such the Nakamura AJ Styles match was such a letdown in many fans' minds. But that's a good one. Go. Is there anything else?
Absolutely. So we all love Hogan, Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3. But oh my God, work rate wise, Andre versus Hogan, Saturday night's main event.
We watched that match. Yeah, it was not that good at all.
How bad a rematch was that?
The match was not that good at all, but the finish and the story that was told with the twin referees and DiBiase's involvement in buying the championship and the finish itself, I thought was, it had an effect on me as a kid because I was so upset. The match quality itself was terrible. Terrible.
And I just thought it was overbooked too. They could have.
Well, I think they overbooked it because the fact that the quality of the match wasn't going to be that good because Andre's health was not in great condition.
Yeah,
either.
That's true.
So that's another good one that comes to mind because even though the quality of Hogan Andre at WrestleMania 3 wasn't great, the story that was told and the magnitude of it and what it did for wrestling, the sellout stadium, the slam heard around the world, I think people. All of that kind of camouflages the quality of the match itself because Andre's back was in poor health at that time at WrestleMania as well. So those are some good examples. Do you have any others?
Well, one last one. The one that broke my heart the most, and this was the rematch I was looking forward to the most, and the Hogan WCW era, Roddy Piper versus Hogan. I was so excited with that one. Actually, it was the one where he put him in the sleeper, and it's it was just the way he got that I don't know.
Because they wrestled a few times in WCW.
Really, I know it's for the title. I know the first one anyway. The one I saw was just so fucking bad. It was for the title. I want to say, I don't know. Warrior made it. It was he lost. Then
So the first one, Piper beat Hogan. It was a non-title match at a Starrcade.
Yeah, he won.
And he won. And it was actually not a bad match. The hype for it going into that show was actually pretty good. The quality of it wasn't what fans had expected of them from a decade prior, but I think the hype helped make the match better. It wasn't as good as their originals, but it was still solid nonetheless. The title match you're referring to?
Yeah.
Hogan won it, right?
Yeah, Hogan won.
I think
NWO shenanigans. You know?
Yes, so I think you're thinking Super Brawl, and that was when Savage joined the NWO.
Yep,
I think that's what you're thinking of. Yeah, and then there was the cage match at Halloween Havoc.
Oh, that was a shite
which was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. When Savage was involved in that as well, and the kid dressed up as Sting, he was a fan, scaled the cage and got in, and then they had to beat the kid up. But yeah, that was a pretty awful finish. And Piper won that, but the NWO still had to get their heat back. So as far as rematches that didn't live up to the original, in my opinion, you had some good ones. Okay, this series of matches, it wasn't necessarily they didn't live up to the original; they just weren't. I preferred the original over the two matches. And I'm talking about the trilogy with Ricky Steamboat and Ric Flair in 1989. The first match from the Chi-Town Rumble in 1989 when Steamboat beat Flair to become the World Heavyweight Champion, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, was a fantastic match. Not only the story that was told, but the fact that as a kid, I was so happy to see Ric Flair lose. I wanted the good guy Steamboat to win. And Flair had for years had the Four Horsemen, helping him win. He had cheated out Sting. He cheated out Dusty. He had gone through all these, Nikita. All these different big names that Flair and the Horsemen had. Luger at one point that he had cheated to defeat and keep the title. That Steamboat, the good guy that he was, came back and won the title. Now, they had a 2 out of 3 falls match in April at the Clash of the Champions, which is a great match, but I felt it went a little too long, in my opinion. And I know that there are going to be some wrestling purists out there that are going to have an issue with that. But nonetheless, I thought, like I said, I just preferred the original first. And then the match, the last match in the trilogy when Flair beat Steamboat at Wrestle War. And that was the infamous match where post-match Terry Funk attacked Ric Flair and pile drove him on the table, and that turned Flair into a babyface, and that set up the rivalry with Flair and Funk. Great match. I just preferred Steamboat beating Flair, and I enjoyed that match. So those weren't the worst rematches, but it was just because of personal preference. I enjoyed Steamboat Flair the first time from Chi-Town Rumble 89. If there's some other rematches in wrestling history that I could go through and say that the originals didn't, or that the rematches didn't live up to the original. And this is going to be a big deal coming from me, okay? Because I've talked about the original match being my favorite wrestling match of all time and the greatest wrestling match of all time.
I know where you're going now.
But I think Shawn Michaels Undertaker from WrestleMania 26 was not as good as Shawn Michaels Undertaker from WrestleMania 25.
Yeah.
The stipulation, career versus streak, great. I loved it.
Yeah.
Okay? And they told a great story in the match. I think the match is great in its own right. I just think 25 blew it out of the water. And personally, if Undertaker, the finish of that match at 25, if Shawn Michaels walked away from wrestling and said, after that WrestleMania 25 match, and said, I couldn't end the streak, there's nothing else for me to do, and he walked away, I'd have been okay with that. I liked the stipulation, the career versus streak at 26, and I like the story that Shawn Michaels wanted that redemption. He wanted, because he was this close. He was this close to beating Undertaker. I love the story. I just thought the match was not as good as the first one.
You know what? I get it. They made hand over money, hand over fist money because of that match, and I get why they did it. But in a perfect world, you don't repaint the Mona Lisa. You leave
That's
it alone.
That's a good way of putting it.
You leave it alone.
I like
let
it.
legacy let it be.
That's a good way of putting it.
Or at least 6-7 years later, fine. Then you go back to that. But it was too soon, and it was like they're talking about Shinsuke versus AJ expectations. You got to figure that match was probably the highest expectation match of all time. Don't you think for WrestleMania?
Shawn and Undertaker. Yeah. It was even billed like the greatest rematch of all time before the match even happened.
Yeah.
I remember them on television billing it as such. So I was so hyped for that match, and here's the other aspect of that too, that the year prior at 25, Shawn and Taker blew the roof off of that place and blew everything out of the water. That the matches that followed that suffered. Cena, Edge, and Big Show in a triple threat, while it was a fun match, that crowd was exhausted. And by the time they got to Triple H and Randy Orton, I don't think anybody gave a shit. So when they put Shawn and Taker on at the end of 26, they realized, all right, these guys are going to give us a classic. They could steal the show again. Let's put them on last. And like I said, a great match, but not as good as the first. And it didn't live up to the first, in my opinion. And I think the stipulation with the streak versus career helped it. And the hype going into it, the greatest WrestleMania rematch of all time. Another match that I think didn't live up to the original, and many have said it's the better match of the two, was Cena and Rock.
Oh yeah, you're splitting hairs when you say which one was better though.
28, the hype, once in a lifetime in Miami, Rock's hometown. I was there. You could feel that energy. You could feel that energy in that city. There was as much as most of those people were there that wanted to see The Rock win, there was a lot of Cena supporters at that show, and the hype for it was unbelievable. I never felt, at that point in time, I didn't feel any hype for a match like that. The last time I felt hyped up for a WrestleMania match like that was when Stone Cold and The Rock, probably at one of those WrestleManias, faced off. It was as big as that. And so, at 28 being there in Miami, it was just wow, this is unreal. And the match wasn't bad. it was a fun finish, and Rock won. And then when they did the rematch and they put the title on it, back then, I'll be honest with you, as much as I supported it, in hindsight, it probably wasn't the best idea. And I only say that because I think it felt forced that they were trying to get this rematch again, and they included the title into it. I didn't think it needed the title.
You're absolutely right about that.
But when I left that night at MetLife, at WrestleMania 29, watching that match, I thought, like, bell to bell, the match at that time was actually better than the one at 28. And then I watched it recently, and I was like, oh, no. It's not as good as the first one. But the first one's not that great either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
My problem with the second one is you knew who was going to win before the bell. I thought it would have been interesting.
That's a good point.
If Cena Bomber would have lost, I actually would have think maybe guys this could be his potential. You know, everyone's blowing their load. Let's get a heel run. You know, I think I could have been potential to open the door to it.
Yeah.
But we just knew. When I saw him literally 3 days before this, like on the Today Show, I'm like, they're not gonna make this fucking guy turn heel. He's winning.
Yeah.
It's like we already knew who was gonna win before that was the only thing that bothered me with that match.
Now, let me ask you something. We're talking about rematches, and we talked about rematches that didn't live up to the original or didn't exceed, the original. What are some rematches in wrestling history? Just give me a couple that you think far exceeded or lived up to the original or was better than the original.
I could think of that. So I'm trying to think of like Triple H, Shawn Michaels potentially. That of course, if you're talking about rematches, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels. Every time they fought, what I'm trying to say is you got like the Hell in a Cell, which I don't know. Every time they as much as I hate Shawn Michaels,
they were great matches.
They're all unbelievable.
All right, but give me matches that you felt lived up, that were better than the original.
That is what I'm trying to think. I don't know. That's such a good question. I don't know. Let's be fair. 99% of the time, the original match is so much better than the other ones. I don't know.
They are or they're not?
They are, yeah.
That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. And then I actually just go back to Undertaker and Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
That Hell in a Cell is my favorite one.
All right.
I think it's better than the WrestleMania matches. I really, I'll die in that hell. That you got the Kane aspect involved. The work rate was unbelievable. I would die in the hill.
But I'm saying the rematches, the matches that followed the original.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think you thought the original was better than the original.
No.
I'm trying to think. I can't think of any because the originals are always so much better than the rematches.
Okay.
I can't think of any. I really can't.
Okay. Couple that come to mind just off the top of my head: the TLC matches, Edge and Christian, Hardy's, Dudley's. It seems like they seem to top each other every single time. That's just me. And more recently, in the last few years, the Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano matches on NXT. They had that great match at that Cruiserweight Classic. Then they had that non-sanctioned match at a TakeOver. Then they had like a street fight at another TakeOver that was really good. Then they had some like final encounter match that was really good on an NXT. Like I thought like all of them just they got better and better. Those are just the few that come to mind.
That's a good one.
In my opinion.
That's a good one.
So, that about does it for this episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. Our next episode, Dennis and I are going to cover Diamond Dallas Page and Goldberg from the same Halloween Havoc that we were watching. Hope you guys weren't too bored during the Hogan Warrior watch along. If you didn't watch it, you just were listening to the discussion, that's cool. But if you watched it with us, that's great as well. We're going to cover DDP Goldberg, Halloween Havoc 98. We're going to talk a little bit about Goldberg's streak, what led up to that, Diamond Dallas Page, the build-up, and we'll talk about if it, was it a good idea to end Goldberg's streak and then some. So I look forward to doing that with you, bud.
Let's do it.
All right. So with that being said, I think this one is officially down for the 3 count, and I'll see you all next time.